Welcome back. We are episode 3 of Backseat Thriver. Yay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. We have our first guest today, which we're really excited about.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know. Let's
Thank
go.
you.
I'm
Yes.
so impressed with myself.
You should be. You see, we had all of this planned for you. Our first guest, it's monumental.
And our subject is right on par.
Our subject is right on par. We're going to get to our subject and our amazing guest speaker. But let's talk about a little follow-up from our last episode on midlife crisis.
Oh,
Bridget,
yeah,
you
that
had
was
some
good.
fun comments.
Yeah, so I was talking to my mom afterwards, and she was like, hey, by the way, you girls need to get yourself in check, and we are not old ladies, old men, old people. We are teenagers, okay?
I love
I absolutely
this.
love that.
We are seen.
We are teenagers.
Like, I mean, but also, okay, Bridget's mom, let's talk about this. Does this mean we're senile, seniors, seen as you see us? Like, that could be taken a lot of ways. So we
there
might
you
need to get a
go.
little clarification on that.
And what was your mom's commentary?
Well, she wanted to know why Bridget was wearing her watch on her right hand. My mom was, why does she wear it on her right hand if she's not left-handed?
Has your mother never seen anybody wear her watch on her right hand?
Well, it's funny because my mom and I are both left-handed, so like we're very like I see that you're not writing with your right hand, but I think when you see somebody with their watch on their right hand, it's weird looking.
So I had to think about it for a little while. Like, why do I wear it on my right hand? So here's what I came back with. Okay, Mom. So there's a couple of things. I really feel that I should have been left-handed.
Childhood trauma.
Childhood trauma. As an athlete, I always had all my footwork playing volleyball was always for a left-handed hitter. I was ambidextrous. I was a middle hitter. I could hit right and left-handed.
Interesting.
So
That's
where I
cool,
went.
Bridget.
I know.
You're so cool. This also plays
wanna
really
be like
well
you,
into our
Bridget.
topic today about ego, as you keep telling me how great you are at everything.
I'm switching my watch because I want to
Switch
be
your watch.
just like Bridget.
But then I started thinking about it, and I was like, why do I do that? So I've had a baby on my hip for years, and you have to do everything right-handed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're holding a little kiddo on your left hand, you never know what time it is. So I started wearing my watch on my right hand. So as
Unconventional.
I'm multitasking, doing things with a child on my hip, I can see what the hell's happening in life
I
and
love
what
it.
time it is to pick up the next kid. So
I love it.
There's a rhyme and a reason here.
Okay.
I think it's a good exercise for us to now I'm going to wear my watch on my right hand for a while and
There you go.
just
see.
switch the brain up a little bit.
I like it.
I think it's good. Challenge. Yeah, it's growth.
Ronnie and Bridget, how did you both sleep last night?
Like a baby.
Okay. I'm impressed.
No.
I actually slept amazing last night.
problem.
Why?
So I started trying those the melatonin sleep. I did them 2 days in a row. Game changer.
Although they do not work for me.
Yeah,
They
but
do
you have to
not
give
work
into
for
it though.
me.
Like when you start feeling tired, you have to give in. You can't just keep
Oh,
doing
yeah.
what you need
Keep
to do.
doing something else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
That's true.
Well,
No.
what is?
I
Isn't
take a
that
drug.
the point? You take it.
like a drug.
Giving in is the best part. That's what you want, right?
But you can't fight the sleep. Like if you take a melatonin and then you start a Netflix movie and you're like, oh, I got to get to that next one. You're fighting your sleep.
I see.
Like you got to
yeah.
you got to give into the
Yeah,
tiredness.
you got to pick your priority.
How did you sleep?
I slept good, decent. You know, my kid had baseball practice till 9:00, and he had a game on Tuesday that went until 9:45. So we're all
See,
tired.
this is why I didn't procreate.
You know what? That's
I'm not
going to
a
be
breeder.
a whole other episode. The smart ones who don't procreate. Let's hear what you have to say. Okay, so I'm glad everybody slept well. So there's no reason anyone should be, off
Loopy.
today. You guys better be on it.
Yeah.
We have a big topic.
Challenge.
We do.
So today we are talking about check your ego, amigo. Raul, can we pan to Bridget?
Can we see Bridget's shirt, please?
Check your ego, amigo.
No mistake here.
Bridget, you're just phenomenal.
You're on it.
Yeah.
I'm on fit.
You
I'm
are-
on fire.
you are on
got
it.
this.
You're on it and you're on Amazon. I mean, hello.
Both. Are you going to make any money if everybody starts buying these shirts?
That's right.
No, but Etsy probably will.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
cool.
love Etsy.
Okay.
Love Amazon.
Well, I am so excited, as I know you are too.
Yes.
This was a topic that Bridget and I had been talking about for a while when we're talking about one of the biggest things for self-growth and awareness and all of that. And so we're kind of brainstorming, who could we talk to who actually knows about ego?
Who has
and
the biggest ego?
Who has the biggest ego I know?
That needs the most work.
Roni Ziemba, who is just one of my favorite
Ziemba,
people.
Ziemba.
I feel embarrassed to say it like that. Is that
Zhuzh,
ego?
Zhuzh.
Roni Ziemba.
Ziemba. There you
Okay.
go.
So is that French?
It is Polish.
Polish. Okay.
Polish, yeah.
So Roni
Everybody
Ziemba.
thinks I'm African. They're always expecting me to be
Okay.
African American.
Okay.
Born and
Okay.
raised. Got it.
We're fixing it up. Okay.
Yeah, you got to come this way.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
We got to get it
Get
ready.
it
We all
together.
situate, and I'm going to move this watch back to
That
the
must
side,
feel really weird.
'cause
Yeah.
screw that.
Throwing you
That
off
is-
balance.
Yeah.
It's like, messing with your
okay,
chi.
I got it all. I did the challenge to my brain, and it's
Yeah.
over now.
Good.
Okay.
So, Roni, thank you so much for being on our
So glad
little
to be
podcast
here.
today. We are so excited to have you. I've known Roni for over a decade, and I think we were just doing the math.
15 or
15, 16 years, something like that.
That's amazing.
So,
Boy, the history. That's another show.
Isn't it
altogether.
wild? I know. And it's so fun. So I'm going to let Roni talk a little bit about herself for a minute,
shit.
just to kind of introduce who you are, why we think that you're qualified on this topic. Because, the big caveat on this podcast was guests, some qualified, some not so qualified.
much.
I'm thinking you're falling in the qualified bucket, but
Well, we'll see.
We'll see at the end of
feeling
this. So
see.
talk to us a little bit about your journey to, from where you were to here you are now.
Here I am now.
Yep.
Well, if we're talking about the personal development realm, right?
Well,
Not all that
sure.
other
Like
stuff.
we'll get to
You want to
that.
hear about
but
all the fun things I
yes,
did in high school?
Give us your. We'll get there too. We'll ask you. But yeah, give us your elevator. pitch.
I've been doing personal development. It feels like my whole life. I started when I was 18. I got married very young. And that's a whole nother story about trauma and reaction and all that stuff. But I got married when I was 18 to a man, very, very awesome man, who was very schooled in personal development. He'd studied a lot. He had some Buddhism background. And we ate macrobiotic at the time, and it was like, ooh, the new thing. And this was in, oh my gosh, this was very, very early, years ago.
Just a few.
And so I learned a lot from him, and I was intrigued by it. And then we got divorced, and not because of anything he did, but because I really rebelled about. I thought that being married, I was going to have to be a certain kind of person. I was going to have to be a housewife and blah, blah, blah. And I really rebelled against that. And it wasn't until later that I realized that, you can make a marriage anything you want it to be. I had a great guy for doing that. I just couldn't do it. So, 19 and a half, I popped out of it and went on to something else. But in my early 20s and mid 20s, I started going down a road that was, I would say it was on the way to some addictions. I was drinking a little too much. I was doing a little bit of, this and that in terms of the drug world.
Oh, boy. Well, it
Again,
was the
another
80s, right?
podcast all alone.
70s?
And this was
60s?
late 60s, early
Oh, my
70s,
God. Okay,
dear.
so that's perfectly, yeah.
You weren't even born yet.
I'm your hype man here.
So my mother saw that my mother was an amazing woman.
Yes, she
I'm
was.
going to cry. Hello, Mom. And she saw that I was going down this road, this tough road, and she really felt like I was not going to be able to take advice from her. And she felt like she didn't really have the skills either to manage it. So she had been listening to some personal development tapes, audio tapes. You remember those?
Mm-hmm.
And so she gave me a set of audio tapes by Brian Tracy and Norman Vincent Peale and all of that. At the time, that was a big deal about personal development and how to set goals and change your mindset and all that. And I started studying on them. And I saw that the path I was going down that was very negative and going in a bad way, really, I started to slowly but surely make some changes and, go down a much healthier road. And it isn't that I haven't dipped into that other pond now and then, but it really helped me sort of, and I built onto that. And then in the mid-'80s, I began working for a company. I took a job. I actually thought it was another job than it actually was. And I was very surprised when I went to my first meeting.
I'm here for the dishwasher job.
I thought it was a fashion job. And it was not. It was on the speaking circuit. I was the assistant to a guy who was very famous in the chiropractic world and had a big following and was very advanced. And so I traveled with him, and then he slowly began to give me a little bit of his platform and more of his platform. And then I had a separate room from him doing the same thing to different audience.
Working
and
on
it kind of grew from
communication
that.
and all of. And you worked with Tony Robbins.
I did. So Tony Robbins, I produced this big. We called it the extravaganza, and we had about 1,000 people at these things, and it was very shishi at the time. It was the 80s. It was at the heyday of the personal development thing when I think everybody was, they wanted to make more money, so they wanted to know how to make even more money. Mm-hmm. They thought it was all about goal setting, and it was really more about communication. So I invited Tony to be on our stage and talk to our audience for it, and it was great, and we built a little bit of a relationship. And then I did the fire walk with him, which was really amazing and transformative. And then, I was sort of in his world a little. He was in my world a little. Mostly he was in my world, not me and his. But
I'm going to go ahead and say she definitely follows in the qualified bucket.
I'm going to say qualified.
Falls in the qualified
Falls
bucket.
in the qualified.
Yes.
about that.
All right. That means you're qualified. We're thrilled you're here.
Stamp. Do I get something?
Yes.
Stamp?
Okay.
Do I get a T-shirt?
Well, I think you should.
We'll get you a T-shirt.
You'll get the
Okay.
Thriver T-shirt when we get it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Okay. So Bridget, we kind of need to set the scene a little bit, kind of define some words.
Absolutely. And so what Roni hasn't shared yet, and we're going to go into this amazing world of hers, because it really is. You've just
had a good life.
You've had an eclectic background.
That's true.
And I think you've just barely sprinkled on what we're going to talk about today in communications and
self-awareness.
And I think that, and you're not blowing your ego here. You're not blowing your ego here and sharing all the amazing things that you've done with your life and with your work. So we're definitely going to go into that. But one of the things that we're going to be talking today, which is the theme shirt of the day, the Check Your Ego Amigo, and I think it's something that we ask ourselves all the time. If you're not asking yourself all the time, you kind of should be asking yourself often.
Listen carefully if you're not.
Listen carefully. Is, what is an ego? And, and really what does that mean? Because a lot of us think of ego as overblown confidence, somebody that's being super braggadocious, somebody that is just
In your face.
Their head is this big, and they're walking around and they're telling you that it's this big, and this is why it's this big, and here's my credentials. I've got a paragraph of accolades, and that's really it. And there's probably so many of us that are listening, and the three of us in this room, we could probably name off, a booklet.
40 egos, we know.
A booklet of them. And, what first comes to mind for me when I think of egos, when we started talking about this, is professional athletes, the extreme, business,
CEOs, the great leaders,
the artists,
Or the terrible leaders.
or the
Well, that's
terrible
true,
leaders.
yeah.
I like the first thing that came to mind for me was an athlete and Kanye West. Like,
Oh, there you go.
does your ego get bigger than that? I don't know. It's pretty big. Thank you, hype man.
Let's just do a whole show about naming people we think that have big egos.
Yes.
Man.
You could do it. We'll just list it in our.
And isn't it close to election time?
Right.
I don't know. Weird. Awkward.
All right.
But really, go ahead.
No, go. I was going to say, so let's define ego.
Okay.
So Bridget, what's the actual definition of that? We
let's
talked
look it
a
up.
little bit. It was one's own like self-interest.
Self-confidence is what it said, what the dictionary says.
Oh, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance.
Right. And I think that is a very watered down, pedantic sort of definition. I think it's the socially accepted definition that makes us think of the braggadocio, self-confidence. Truly, the ego is a driving force of our identity, and we are all born with egos, but we are born with an ego that is undeveloped, and it can either get developed in one direction or the other, right? Depending on our environment. Do we have a healthy home life? Then our ego gets developed in, maybe a softer way. If we are born into a more traumatic kind of situation, then it has to do more fighting for itself, and it becomes bigger in another way. But in whatever the genesis of it, our ego is a fighter. It fights for itself. It constantly is looking around for proof of its own identity, and its own identity is probably the weakest part about us. It is the part that is I, me, all about itself, because it's protecting itself. And I like to think of the ego as having two personalities, the baby and the bully. So most people think of the ego as the bully, but the baby is actually the driving force of the ego. It's the I'm hurt, I'm wounded, wah, 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 I'm not getting enough attention, you're not paying enough attention to me. And then the bully comes in and communicates the fight of it. Hey, you're not paying enough attention to me. It's the same kind of demanding. It's just a different kind of communication that the ego does.
Is one more dangerous than the other?
Well, sure, because in the outward world, the bully is going to go out and cause fights and take things wrong and try and manipulate things to get their own way. And the baby is the victim. Mm-hmm. It's the 3-year-old. And how the ego is developed essentially is when we are little, we start making decisions about life. But we make decisions about life from a very illogical place. We don't understand the world, but we're making decisions about it. I'll give you an example.
Like as a young. So we're kind of getting into right now. You're going to kind of take us through the path of how does the ego develop? So like starting from birth.
So I'm 3 years old.
So Roni, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because
Please.
That's a perfect cliffhanger. We're going to take a quick commercial break.
Got it.
We'll be right back.
Love it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Alan Murdoch. For the past 20 years, I've been buying, fixing, and selling properties right here in Southern Arizona. And I want to buy your property. Whether it's a house, apartment, commercial building, or vacant land, regardless of the condition or the situation, I want to talk to you. When you sell to me, I pay cash and it's hassle-free. No repairs, no closing costs, and no commissions. If you have a property you don't want to deal with and you want a quick solution, call, text, or visit selltoalan.com. Again, that's selltoalan.com.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash. When you call in anonymously with a tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward. Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
We can print anything on our soft vanilla logo cookies. We deliver them and other sweet treats locally.
We are located at 4249 West Ina Road, Suite 121. Call us 520-300-1131. We bake smiles. Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
Calling all families. The Marana Pumpkin Patch is your ticket to fall fun for everyone. From toddlers to grandparents. We've got it all. Jumping pillows, a diesel train, a super slide, and more. Kids will love our farm animals, while adults will love our famous corn maze. And don't forget our 70-acre pumpkin patch from Post Farms. Marana Pumpkin Patch, where families make unforgettable fall memories. Tickets available now at maranapumpkinpatch.com.
Okay, we're back from that quick commercial break. So, Roni, you are about to talk to us about
I was
how
at my 3-year-old self.
Your 3-year-old self.
Actually, it's just a sort of generic story, not my own personal story. But so imagine that you're 3 or 4 years old and your mom comes in the room and is just chewing your butt out. But you're 3, 4 years old, you don't really understand it, and she is standing there with a yellow umbrella. And she's got an apron on, and it's got a stopped coffee stain in the shape of a circle, and she's got certain kind of boots on, and she's got, blonde hair parted down the middle, let's say. So you make this decision at the time of being criticized and being hurt, and you get wounded. So that's like one little piece of your baby, your victimhood that can travel throughout your life with you. So fast forward, 25 years and you're in the office and your boss comes up to you and she's holding a yellow folder and she's saying, "Hey, Roni, this paragraph right here in the report you wrote, I think it needs a little work." And you, "Oh my gosh, she's got blonde hair." You're not thinking this consciously, but unconsciously, it's in there and you get triggered. Her hair is parted down the middle and it's blonde and she's carrying a yellow, and your subconscious will react to it and get triggered to it. Most of our triggers are from very early on, where we made decisions about our life and what is going to be safe and what is not going to be safe. And then our egos react. "Well, that is a stupid thing to say. That was a great report. I don't know why you said it that way." And it spirals, and now you're in a difficult relationship, and
Or you have the ego, and you're in the corner rocking because it's so dramatic. You yelled at me, and oh my gosh, this is so scary. I'm not going to react.
Exactly. Anytime we're overreacting to a situation, you can be sure it's tied to something that was formed in our irrational brains, illogical brains when we were very young. So anytime you feel yourself overreacting to something, you can be sure it's historical. It's not current. You're not being in the current. So you've got this relationship that is now spiraling out of control, and you don't know how to get out of it. And the only way you know how to get out of it is the ego defending itself and being combative and being defensive. And that's its job. But it was formed from being a little kid. So that's where our ego starts to develop the ego is always going to be defensive, but a healthier ego has less defenses than an unhealthy ego that has more defenses. But it's still defensive. That is the job of the ego, is to defend itself and to look for proof. So now I've got proof that the world is against me because my boss criticized one line in the report, and we magnify it and we look for those things. Our ego does. And this is not conscious. It's all back there in our little child brain.
I love how you just mentioned a healthier ego versus an unhealthy ego. So you hear that. Somebody's either really egotistical or they have a healthy ego. And is that such a thing?
Yes and no. I promise you that every single one of us, even the healthiest of us, have an ego that rejects things, even internally, inside of ourselves. I can't believe I did that. And why do I look like that? And how do I fix that? And it's all those criticisms that the ego is searching and searching and searching for some kind of consolation to be attended to. So the healthy ego, working with the ego, is a skill. And some people have more skill of it because they were raised in a healthier environment, but they still have that ego that defends and contradicts, whereas somebody else has it more egotistical, more outward, more confrontational. But we all have egos, and the ego's job is to defend.
So how does somebody who might be listening think, okay, some of this is connecting for me. How do you become aware of your ego? How do you know if you're the person that we're talking about, if you've got a problem versus not?
Well,
what is true self-awareness on that?
Well, first of all of us are that person that we're talking about. All of us have that. That moment that you feel yourself, even in verbiage, I like that report, but that's defensiveness. Yeah, I think you're right, but, or yeah, I understand I did that because, and all of those are, everything after but and because is a defense of why we did something or how we did something. So when we become more aware of our own internal triggers and defenses, whenever we overreact, whenever we literally, the ego's job is to say, I, me. So you're in a situation with someone, your boss, your coworker, your partner, and you're going, but I, because I think all of that is like, I see, I'm starting to defend myself. And when I'm defending myself, I'm not connecting. So it's separateness versus connectedness. And the ego wants to be separate because it wants to be I. It wants to be taken care of. And so it's all about creating separation so I can get what I want.
But what if I am right and you are wrong?
Well,
why
do you
can't
want
I
to be right or do you want to be connected?
Okay, I like
Situational.
that. However, when is it appropriate? Because I'm starting to think about, and maybe this is ego right here where I'm like, yeah, but I'm starting to think about, you heard me last episode, I hate injustice. Like if I told you the sky is blue and you're telling me, no, it's actually purple, like, no, it's not. It's blue. Whatever, insert whatever scenario. But when is it, and maybe what you're saying, what I hear you saying is that,
Thank you.
that ego, right? Like that can be ego driven of like, no, I actually am right. But are you saying in that sort of situation, instead of being defensive, we need to pause? We need to think about, why am I feeling defensive? Like walk us through what that looks like.
So the first thing is, but I think I'm right. Why do you need to be right? Why is it that we need to be right? Is it more important to be right? Like, who cares if that person thinks that the sky is purple and you know it's blue? There are some people out there that think the earth is flat and you cannot convince them they believe it. Who cares? That's great. You think the earth is flat? Awesome. It is the difference between, so I hate injustice as well. I mean, very much so. We both are very connected. We're all three connected with worlds that have a lot of that in it that we're dealing with. The public safety world, for instance, that is always needs to fix things and clean up things, and there's a lot of injustice. But it's a matter of, what do you want out of life? Do you want to have confrontation? Do you want to be right about the sky being blue? Even though it is, but like, how important is that?
Okay.
Is that something you really need to? Anytime we want to fix somebody, change somebody's mind, I mean, that's all ego, and it's creating separation, not creating connection.
So that's really the core of this. We really have to look and say, do we want to, how important is being right? And, one of the things that I had written down to talk to you about also was surrendering that control, right? I mean, so is it fair to say that ego and this need for control really go hand in hand?
Hand in hand. The control comes from the ego reacting and defending. So in Buddhism, there's a word anatta, and anatta means egoless. The precepts of Buddhism are all suffering comes from attachment. Attachment to anything in the earth causes us suffering. And if you look at it, all of our crying, all of our arguing is attachment to some sort of perspective that I want to defend. And it's confrontational, it's separating. So in Buddhism, the whole work is to detach. And that doesn't mean be cold, and it doesn't mean don't be loving and compassionate. It means don't be attached to an outcome or a perspective or your rightness. And that's where peace comes from. I mean, that's where the Buddhist peace comes from. That's where our own personal growth and peace comes from, is no longer being in this constant state of confrontation and fixing and criticizing and, you know, all of that. Would you rather be in a world that was compassionate and peaceful, or a world where you were right all the time?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just comes down to that.
But why is that so hard,
I know,
right?
it's
Because
so
like
hard.
I'm sitting here and I love the thought of just kind of walking through life, walking through your day of,
Zen.
thank you for insulting me. Like, just letting that one roll off my shoulders here. Like how, and it does make me question, okay, it comes back every time. How bad do you want to be right? Do you want to be connected? I love that.
Right.
Like if that's our takeaway, tell yourself that every time you start to feel defensive. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be connected? Because you're widening the gap between relationships that are with people that are very important.
And is it situational?
It's,
because
extremely.
Because in my circle, well, maybe I do want to be right. Maybe I do want to, I do want to set that standard, or I want to make sure that I'm heard. But outside of my circle, I'm very much that person. Like, I don't care that that you criticize me.
Right.
I don't care because
I trust you.
Because I trust you.
Right.
And
The trust, that is such a critical piece of this.
And take it back again to our little child when we're being criticized and we're feeling judged, not heard, not seen. And I like to think of the ego as a symptom. So when I feel that come up, it's more like a symptom. Like when you get a fever, yeah, you can take a pill and you can bring the fever down, but you haven't really addressed what's causing the fever. Well, the ego reaction is the same thing. It's a symptom. So one way of dealing with the ego and its symptomatic personality is to listen to it. So, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Okay, you're trying to tell me you're not being heard. So, okay, I got to look at that. And in my relationship, why do if I need to be heard, I can either ask for what I want. I need to be heard. I need you to hold me. I need to be comforted. Because most of the time we expect people to read. Would you? Right now?
Absolutely. Come on over.
We expect people to read our minds. And then when they don't, or they don't fulfill our expectations automatically, then we think they're wrong. We cut them out, we withdraw, we punish, we do all the things to separate them because they didn't know what we needed. And sometimes we don't know what we need until we stop and really kind of listen. Okay, ego, you're overreacting right now. What do you need? Typically, it is saying, I need to be seen, I need to be heard. And there are ways to do that healthy and ways not to.
So when you're saying we, and I'm connecting we to women, because we hear a lot of times, but we're not talking just about women here, and that's where when I hear we, and I expect you to read my mind. I think that's like the meme of the day for all men. Like, I can't read your mind. Just tell me what you want. Right. And so, we expect everybody to be, we as women expect our partners, our friends, whatever it be, to be a mind reader. But when we're saying we and we're differentiating men and women, is in your work that you've done, have you seen more of a difference in the balance of egos between genders?
Yes, I think the way of expressing it has a tendency to be different. I think it's the same. So women have a tendency more to go into the victim, and men have the baby, and men have a tendency to go more into the bully, because that's how we've been taught to act. Women are supposed to be passive, so our ego gets hurt, so we wah, and we don't know how to say, hey, I'm not feeling seen and I'm not being heard. And guys have a tendency more, because it's more socially accepted, like, oh my God, I can't believe that guy cried. Like, what is wrong with him? Whereas he starts, a fighting stance and gets confrontational. It's really the same baby who's crying. We're just communicating them in different ways.
One's more physical,
more bigger, and I want to make a bigger presence, and the other is, very meek and passive and crying and expecting people to know what I need.
Which is equally annoying.
Very equally annoying. But when we look at ourselves, we're like,
so needy, so needy.
My gosh.
Why can't you listen to me?
And we say that to ourselves, like, oh my God, you're so annoying. And we still continue to do the behavior that really isn't solving anything.
So, Roni, would you say, also we talked a little bit about trust and how critical that piece of it is, but there's also this vulnerability. It's so, when you say, I have two choices, I can speak what I need. So on one hand, that's like asking me to run a marathon. I can't.
Right.
You
can't today.
I can't, you know what, you're right. I can't yet, but it is so hard. And I think, I don't know that that's a male versus female. I think we all struggle with that. I don't want to ask for help because
I want to be right.
Right.
I don't want to run a marathon.
Oh gosh, no kidding.
That is my smart ego, my healthy
that's
ego
your healthy
saying,
ego.
I don't want to.
But if you wanted to,
you
would develop the skill. You would do the training, but you wouldn't run 23 point, I don't know how, a marathon, 23.2 miles or whatever. You wouldn't do it tomorrow. You would buy a new pair of shoes and you go out for a walk.
I like how you said that. You would create the skill, and when I think of ego, or when I think of what we would say as a healthy ego, you have to be very task oriented. I feel like you have to look. You're constantly wanting to grow. You're constantly wanting to better yourself, because when you get to that point, and and when you think of very successful people like this, people that have C-suite titles, or artists or athletes, okay, just because you've trained and you're the best doesn't mean that you stop training. And that's where, I feel that when you get to that point where you feel that, okay, I'm in this space, this confident space, do you continue to be more confident and your head just starts expanding to that ego?
If you don't check the ego.
Then
we are continually, Byron Katie, who is, I think, the specialist on ego, she calls it Earth School. We are constantly in Earth School, and we can get better at our skill, and it's a skill for a lifetime. When you're talking about athletes, there's a certain point where you can't run marathons anymore. It doesn't make sense. You're physically not able. But in this world, we are able, until the day we die, to learn to have a healthy relationship with our ego. And it really is a skill of, I think of it as the ego, working with the ego is like being a hostage negotiator. My ego is holding me hostage. And if I can go in there and say, look, motherfucker, you're going to be, get out of here. And is that going to work? He's going to pull out his gun. He's going to shoot me, Whereas a hostage negotiator knows, okay, what I first want you to know, ego, I don't know why I keep pointing here that my ego
Your
is
heart
right here.
is your heart, your ego.
Okay, ego, what is it that you're needing? Why are you so upset? Why are you holding these people hostage? Why are you holding me hostage? Why are you being angry? So what first part is listening. What do you need? What's going on? And then beginning to negotiate it. How can I give you what you want and safely and peacefully end this situation? And, successful hostage negotiators end up with the person walking out, nobody gets killed. And the unsuccessful ones, everybody gets shot up and it's a massacre.
And it's not good for anybody.
And it's not good for anybody.
So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back to keep talking about, I love this analogy of a
hostage negotiator.
Yes, because
Boom,
it's
boom.
so true. So, okay, more to come. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Alan Murdoch. For the past 20 years, I've been buying, fixing, and selling properties right here in Southern Arizona. And I want to buy your property. Whether it's a house, apartment, commercial building, or vacant land, regardless of the condition or the situation, I want to talk to you. When you sell to me, I pay cash and it's hassle-free. No repairs, no closing costs, and no commissions. If you have a property you don't want to deal with and you want a quick solution, call, text, or visit selltoalan.com. Again, that's selltoalan.com.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash. When you call in anonymously with the tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward. Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
We can print anything on our soft vanilla logo cookies. We deliver them and other sweet treats locally. We are located at 4249 West Ina Road, Suite 121. Call us 520-300-1131. We bake smiles.
Copper Creek Cookies, Copper Creek Cookies, coppercreekcookies.net.
Calling all families. The Marana Pumpkin Patch is your ticket to fall fun for everyone. From toddlers to grandparents, we've got it all. Jumping pillows, a diesel train, a super slide, and more. Kids will love our farm animals, while adults will love our famous corn maze. And don't forget our 70-acre pumpkin patch from Post Farms. Marana Pumpkin Patch, where families make unforgettable fall memories. Tickets available now at maranapumpkinpatch.com.
All right, we are back. So Roni is taking us through
My lozenge.
taking us through. We're talking a little bit about ego being like a hostage negotiator. So I don't know if you kind of wrapped that up with a bow, but I just love that. It really is this thing that has so much control over you. So what I'd love to dive into a little bit, because the three of us here, I'm sitting here going, okay, I continually want to grow. I don't want to be that person that is like, does she have no clue how she comes off, right? So the self-awareness, I think, is key. But what about somebody who's confident, who's going, okay, well, I'm confident. Does that mean I have an ego because I know how to get shit done, because I know how to get the results that I want and work with people to get that? So talk to me a little bit about your opinion on the differences, and how do you be confident without an ego?
Well, you can't do anything without an ego. Like, the ego is there all the time. So it's confidence can be just confidence.
Are you close enough to your mic?
Confidence
Ooh.
There you go.
can
That
be
sounds better.
just confidence. Again, it's to what degree? Is it healthy confidence, or is it a need for attention, a need to be right? I think in this sense, confidence is just that healthy appreciation, gratitude for who I am. I know that I'm, a fairly worthwhile person. It's when I want to impose it on you, or even impose it on my own self-confidence. The ego is going, you're so full of shit, lady. You're not so great. You think you're so great? You're not so great. You're a punk. Oh, God, yeah, I'm a punk. I'm going to go to bed for a couple days because I feel like crap. And then we have to, like, listen to it. Like, what are you trying to say? Oh, you're trying to say you don't feel validated. So I can either make you validate me, or I can ask you to validate me, or I could validate myself. And so that's where part of our dysfunction comes from, is needing other people to validate us or comfort us. When the truth of the matter is, we've got it all right here, the ability to comfort and support and self-soothe and all of that.
Now, is this something that at any age you can do? Because I was, when we were heading over here, I was telling Roni a little bit about an argument with my daughter, and it was infuriating, where I'm just sitting there and we are looping, and I'm like, I fucking heard what you said. I'm giving you the answer. You don't like it. And then all of a sudden we're talking about something totally different. And I'm just like pulled in this loop of insanity of just, why can't you be self-aware? Like, so what are, we talked about this a little bit, these little tips for people to take away. And if this starts so early on, if you're 12, 13, 15, 18, what's realistic for self-growth in your teenage years, and how do we help our kids? Because I think this is, as you said, this is a skill. We need to practice it. They need that muscle memory of pause, think, where is this defensive nature coming from? In my opinion, I'm like, that seems crazy to think that a child can have that, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it comes at any age. I think depending on what your models are. So what behavior you're modeling. So she's modeling behavior that she either decided or that was shown to her when she was very early on in making decisions. So her decisions in life are that she's not ever going to be heard. And she's going to defend it to the death until it gets proven to her, or she sees it herself, that I can either hear myself or I can be heard in my family. And what I hear you talking, we were talking about this in the car on the way over, is, but I'm right. And of course you're right. Of course you know more than she does. Of course. But the way we communicate, it's like that hostage negotiator. You think she's not going to come out with guns blazing? She is.
And I think, too, that it's, in a lot of scenarios, it's situational.
Sure.
I was talking to my son about it, and we were talking to Raul over the break. It's, how do you see ego, or how does this affect you? Either how are you affected by ego, or how are you projecting that on others? And he was just like, well, as an athlete, my son said the exact same thing Raul did. As an athlete, you need to have a little bit of an ego. You need to know that you're confident enough to be competitive. You're confident enough to be, if you want to be the starting on the team, you want to be on that starting lineup, you need to do the work. You need to practice. You need to get to that point. He was like, I'm not going to be the guy that checks a guy on the field and he falls over and it's like, yeah, I got you, bitch, and then keeps on going, But he is he is the guy that has that confidence that he checked him, but he also has the humility to reach down, grab the guy's hand, pull him up, pat him on the back, and then continue on with the game.
Right.
So when and I think that I feel that way in a lot of scenarios when you see athletes, or when you're working with successful business people. They're either, I did this is my work, I presented this, I created this, I did this, or we as a team, my team, our team, us. I think there's a lot of that situational, but I think teenagers don't. I don't feel that they have
They don't
that.
have the brain developed yet
They don't
enough
know.
to be able to distinguish it. Really, some do, because they got taught early, and some just don't. They didn't get the modeling, or they didn't understand the modeling, and they're still reactive.
We're learning it now.
Oh,
we're
for the rest of your life. Earth School.
Yeah.
It is for the rest of your life, trying to balance it. I don't care who you are. So when you talk about ego of the athlete, you have to have that confidence.
The eye of the tiger.
And confidence and ego are different, because the ego, by nature, by definition, is not healthy. But we can learn healthy ways to work with it, to mold it into something that helps drive us forward. And I think that athletes have a lot of, successful and good and healthy athletes have a lot of the ability. They've trained themselves. The ego is going, you can't do this. Are you kidding me? You're ridiculous if you think you can do this. Great, I hear you, and I'm going on it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. And
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for sharing. I get it. You think I can't do it, but I think I can. And that's the difference there is listening to it and then moving on.
Well, and one of the things that I really liked that I was reading about confidence versus ego is that confidence is more of a faith in yourself, right? Versus the ego, which is seeking approval and
constant.
And the seeking part, right? So that made me feel a little bbit better as I'm sitting here going, well, how much do I need to check my ego, right? But I think if we break it out, then I can feel justified if I'm saying, I just have faith in myself, right? You're all idiots.
That has nothing to do with ego at all.
I think we've got to have a little bit of an ego to be doing a live podcast, to think
talk us through that, Roni. Make us feel okay about that.
And two, as we talk about the podcast and we talk about youth, social media. I think social media has really created a new type of ego. It's a new ego, and after this podcast,
it's the old ego in a new form.
Yeah, it's the mirror. Yeah,
mirror. That's exactly.
Yeah,
that's really good. It is a mirror.
So as we're kind of wrapping up, we've just got a few minutes left. So what I would love is let's kind of recap, because I think this is, no matter, we've all said it, right? Everybody has an ego. Everyone in the world is walking through life with some type of ego. So if we are to come out of this time together and say, okay, everyone, you're driving, listening to this, wherever you are, to take a moment and pause, check in with yourself, and kind of get this tool ready in your kit of the next time you're confronted with something where you start feeling yourself being defensive. This is what we're going to do. So Roni, give us a couple of steps. So you're having an argument with your spouse, you feel wronged somehow, and you're going to talk it through. What are the most important things that we need to pause and kind of have this conversation with our ego? What do we need to be doing?
I think the first thing is, when you feel triggered in any situation, you know that your ego's at play, and you know that your young child, your baby in you is being triggered by something old. So that's the first thing, is to kind of get it and go, okay, this isn't really in the moment. This is historical, something that I'm reacting to. So first of all, I have to separate those. Like, it's not you standing there with the yellow folder that I'm being triggered by. Mm-hmm. It's my mom when I was 2 years old. The second thing is to, if I'm feeling like I need to be heard, what I really need to do to de-escalate the situation is to realize that so do you. And so I'm going to be the first one to start to de-escalate it. Hard, isn't it?
So hard. So hard.
I know.
Self-awareness.
You're telling me I have to be the bigger person.
Have to be.
That self-awareness is a hard one to see in the moment.
But maybe that's ego saying I have to be the bigger person. How do I know I'm the bigger person? I might be wrong.
You are. If you think that, you are.
Right. See,
so in that moment, if what you're feeling is I need to be seen and I need to be heard, which is what it's all about. Every confrontation we have, every argument we have, every trigger we have is, wah, 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 I need to be heard. I'm not heard enough. I'm not seen. Nobody's giving me what I need. And then the ego is like, right? And so if we just stop and say, okay, ego, what do you need? Okay, you need to be seen and heard. Yeah. I've heard this 1,000,000 times. Now we get better at realizing, oh, I'm feeling reactive. My ego needs to be seen and heard, and it's not getting it. But we're not going to get it by demanding it or expecting it, because that's where all our suffering comes from, is expectation of something else. Unmet expectations. So then my job is to then say, you also need to be heard. So I'm going to really, in this moment, hear my ego and then hear you. And then I'm going to have to do it 100 times in the conversation, because my ego is going to come back and say, but
that openness
of feedback and saying, okay, what is it that you need in this moment, Christina? What are you asking for, Bridget, that I'm not giving you? And how can I make it better for you? And how can I help give you what you need? And how can I help you give yourself what you need? Because that's really it.
That's a lot of balance.
It is, but you know, and
a lot of balance.
And I think,
a lot of
but it's a skill. Like
The
anything
skill.
else is a skill. You start
Absolutely.
with noticing, and then you start with, oh, I can do this, and oh, I can stop myself, and oh, I can be kind and look out. And then halfway through the conversation, you go, oh, shit, here we are again.
And I think it starts with, you have to be coming from a place, like, this is not going to resonate with anybody who's going, I'm fine, I don't have issues. And that's amazing. If you truly don't, if you've really mastered this,
Go for it.
That's incredible, right? But I think for so many of us, I think you couldn't have said it better. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be connected? And I think that is so much more powerful than saying, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? I think connection is that, the fundamental human need is connection. So, Roni, do you want to be right, or do you want to be connected?
I want to be connected.
You did it so beautifully.
Yeah, sometimes I want to be right. A lot of times I want to be right, but
And Raul wanted to make sure that here's your prize
Raul,
for
my
being on our
little
show today, your LTD media.
Put it on.
So we've got 1 minute left. So let's make sure for all of our listeners, you're following ltd.media on Instagram.
There you go.
Backseat.thriver on Instagram. Bridget, leave us with some final thoughts here.
Some final thoughts that I took away from Roni today, and thank you so much for being here. We're on our social media page. We're going to add a little more bio on Roni, just so our listeners can really understand how amazing she is. We did not have enough time to go through her amazing life and all of the amazing work that you've done. But 3 takeaways: self-awareness, being open to feedback, and balance.
Yep.
Balance that confidence and humility.
Yes.
For me, I would say a big takeaway, you were absolutely right on all that. The big takeaway, I think, is listening to our ego as a symptom of something. Something is off in ourselves, and we need something, and the ego is the one who is the loudest.
All right.
about it.
So
Awesome.
listen to your egos. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Join us next week live at 10 a.m. And we'll be back with more excitement. Roni, thank you so
Awesome.
much
You're
for
so
joining
welcome.
us.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you, Roni.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Raul.